Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
2 certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only 2 best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go. Hello.
Hello.
Greetings and salutations. We got a normal ass person for you today. Oh, but she's Australian.
Yeah, so
she's special.
You're going to love this story and you're going to love her accent. I don't know which one you're going to love more. They're both fantastic.
I like hearing people with accents tell cool stories.
I know.
I mean, I guess we all have accents, but
I'm a sucker for, this is very basic of me, but I'm a sucker for a British accent and a Australian
am I not?
accent.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also a sucker for a Scottish accent.
Oh, well, yeah.
Any Scottish men listening to this right now? Hit me up. Just going to put that out there like
Get your girl.
overtly. Or British. I'm like really not. If you're from the United Kingdom or Ireland, you know, like that's fine. You can't be 60 though. You know what I mean? Like you got to be like within, I'm 32, you know, keep that in mind. You got to be single as well.
We've watched way too many British
Also,
shows
you got to be into monogamy. Like, you know, props to you if you're into polyamory. I'm not. Just you got to be straight. Also, you know,
throw out all the specifications here.
Yeah, you know, somewhat fit would be nice too.
Yeah, no,
decent height.
You hear the list going on and on.
Do you have hair? That would also be preferable. You know. Anyway, it's just that's all.
Just a thought. Throw that one out there. Yeah, I think we watched too many British movies and shows. And
I don't think too many. That's not possible.
I'm still open to new and more. So bring them on.
I get that.
I never tire of a good British drama.
That BritBox subscription where it's just British shows. It's like a streaming thing for just British shows. I want to get that.
What I need in my life.
Yeah. We are very basic. But what are you going to... I mean, around that, I don't think... I'm a type 4. Calling me basic is a real insult. I don't think I'm actually very basic.
I'm like,
you're a little bit more. That's fine. I'm glad that you're willing to admit it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think the Brits like our accents as much as we like theirs.
I can't imagine that you would. And why would you? There's so many better ones to choose from. So ugly sounding. I'm sure it's like, oh my God. Like I'm sure it just sounds even worse.
Nasally.
I know. Ew.
All right. Let's hear about
I'm sure Christina's not basic.
No, she is definitely not.
Okay. So here's her bio. Christina works as a sports physiotherapist, aka physical therapist, in Australia. She spent the early days of her career trying to prove the professors that told her she would never make it in the sports world wrong. She went on to work with professional athletes from multiple countries for many years before settling down in private practice. Now, after 13 years in the industry, this highly sensitive, introverted thriver and recovering people pleaser has learned how to speak up for herself. This shy, small-town girl has finally found a voice and is enjoying the benefits that come with no longer pretending to be okay with everyone else's expectations of her. I love that.
Mm-hmm. And that's a big part of the story.
Christina.
That's letting go of a lot of that people pleasing and starting to speak up for herself is one of the dominoes that led to the whole story that you're going to hear, which the end of the story, like if I give you the end up front and then we'll figure out how did she get there, is she left a job on a Friday, did not know what was going to happen, and had a new job on Monday. In the middle of a global pandemic, by the way.
I mean, listen, if she can do that, a hot Scottish man listening to this right now could hit me up tomorrow.
Yep. Exactly.
So it's not wrong for me to put that out there on this podcast.
And that's kind of what I love about this story is you just don't know. But if you can just follow the signs and keep trusting, you will be led to the right answer. And that's what, I mean, but like hear it for yourself because I knew part of this story before I had this conversation with her. I didn't even know all the details. So you're going to hear me throughout the interview being like, wait, what? What just happened? Because it's even crazier than you think. So please listen.
I love it.
And we will be back at the end.
Okay.
Hi, Christina.
Hello, how are you?
I am pretty good. So you're going to laugh at this. I would have sworn that you and I coached together like a year, maybe a year and a half ago. I just checked my notes before we started recording. It's been 2.5 years.
Yeah.
I somehow lost an entire year, which is, mildly terrifying, but here we are.
Surprising though in the current climate. That's all right.
Yeah, exactly. So all that to say, I'm especially excited to talk to you today because it's been way too long. For everyone listening, Christina emailed me, what was it, like a month or two ago, to tell me a story of something that happened to her recently. And immediately I knew I wanted to share this on the podcast with all of you. So I know the basics of the story, but I'm kind of learning more of the details as we go as well. So I'm excited to dive in.
No, I'm excited to tell it.
I know you've been telling everyone, you said. So we'll just tell this whole audience too. Why not? Okay, so let's start. We're going to rewind a little bit back to your previous job, which was clearly not a very good fit for you for multiple reasons, which we may or may not get into. But I'm particularly curious because one of the things that you told me was that even though your job was feeling worse and worse, you were able to remain open and honest. I mean, really with yourself, but especially with your boss throughout the whole thing. So how in the world were you able to stay true to yourself, even when you were in such a misaligned situation?
Well, I think first of all, if we go back to way before that, I have been in a lot of misaligned situations with jobs over the last, I've been a physio for 13 years, and over those last 13 years, I've been in a lot of misaligned jobs. And my natural tendency was to just run away. It was to just go, this is not working, quit that job and move on to another job. So I actually had 12 jobs over the last 6 years. So chronic job hopper. And I finally just got to the point where that wasn't working, and I knew it wasn't working for a really long time. So then when you and I did the coaching, you really helped me to narrow down my core values and learn when it's actually just a misalignment because it doesn't match up with my values. So I spent a lot of time really digesting that material and getting clear on what my values were. So then when I went into this position, and it originally sounded like it would honor my values, but then quickly found out that that was just my boss telling me these things to get me through the door. And then in reality, it was actually very misaligned. But I had gotten to the point where I was so sick of job hopping and so sick of going through the same motions over and over again that I just said, look, what I'm doing is not working. I'm going to try what you suggested and try what you and Rachel talk about on the podcast and just see. I was like, I've got nothing to lose. What I'm already doing is not working, so I might as well at least try it. And once I did, the first time I was honest with my boss and said, look, this is not really working for me, it was strange because it blew up in my face. It did not go well. It completely changed the whole dynamic and actually made things worse. But I felt better in myself because for the first time, it was me being true to myself, and that felt empowering. And even though it was scary, it was this little bit of power that I was taking back each time. And even though around me was falling apart, I felt like I was growing more internally, more as myself, which sounds strange, but definitely felt empowering. So I said, if I've got a little bit of this, I'm just going to keep going and see where this goes because I've got nothing to lose.
That is so fascinating. for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's almost like you get tired of the same patterns. And you were like, okay, I was trying this thing where I act like everything's fine, but I'm actually miserable. And then I end up job hopping. And I've done that many times. And that's clearly not working. So what if I do something that feels very unnatural to me, which is speak up and be quite honest? And even to the point where I tell a boss, like, this isn't working for me. And that takes some courage to break a pattern. But you almost have to get to the point where you're like just sick of it, which it sounds like that's where you were. You're just sick of the same thing on repeat. And so that helped muster up the courage for you to try something different. And the other piece of this that's so powerful, I think, is you spoke up and it didn't go well, right?
No,
like, it didn't go over well. You're like, it blew up in my face. And yet I was still glad I did it. In a weird way, I felt better internally. So even when sometimes what seems like the worst case scenario happens, you do speak up and it does not go over well, it's still the right thing. And it actually leads you to the right place. So when you speak up and it doesn't go over well, more clarification. Oh, okay. This just isn't the right place for me. It seemed like it was. On paper, it was. I was told that it was all the things that I wanted. But now that I'm here and now that I'm trying to speak up and make it more of what I wanted it to be, still not working. There's kind of power in that clarity.
Definitely. And I don't know where I got this sort of naive belief that if I stood up for myself, everything was going to be perfect and everything was going to go well and everything would work out. I fully believed that. And it's not that anyone ever told me that. It's definitely not that you and Rachel have ever said, you speak up for yourself and it'll be perfect. But I went into it fully expecting I'm going to stand up for myself. He's going to listen and it's going to be wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And it did not happen. And things got 10 times worse instantly. And yet I still had some little piece of me that was proud of what I had done. I was like, wow, I actually did have the courage to do this, which was, like I said, empowering. And I can't logically make sense of why that felt good, seeing as though everything on the surface was so bad. But there was just that little internal bit. I think that comes with actually being true to yourself, certainly for the first time. It's new and it's exciting. And although it's scary, that empowerment sort of takes over.
Yeah, that's that part of you that had felt ignored for a while, like, oh, just hush up. Like, you're being very inconvenient with the things you're telling me. I can't say that to my boss. I can't be that honest even with myself. That part of you is finally getting heard. And I want to give you some serious kudos because I think a lot of people might have tried that and spoken up for themselves and been really honest, and it blew up. And it would have been really normal to just run right back to, well, that didn't work, so never trying that again, and go right back to shutting that part of you down. But you didn't do that. You said, I've unleashed something and I can't go back in the box. And I don't want it to go back in the box, even if it makes my life a little harder for a while. I have to keep being honest because this feels better in a weird way.
Well, it did, because I'd always felt, I'm very much a recovering people pleaser. I have always, ever since I was a small child, just did whatever I was told, never pushed back, even if I absolutely hated the situation or hated the circumstances. And I always felt like I was trapped. And, you take so much of that for so long, you end up getting this deep hurt inside of you that you just want to be heard. You just want to scream, but you're not going to do that because you're an adult and you're professional. And eventually that boils over to the point where you go, something has to change. And like you said, I was sick of the situation, but I was also sick of myself, to be honest. I was tired of going through these complaints in my head. I'm so sick of this. I'm so sick of that, but yet not doing anything about it. So eventually you get to the point where you're like, either say something or shut up, like to yourself. And that's the point that I got to. And then when I did say something, that little voice sort of quieted down a little bit, because I was like, well, actually, that person has been heard for the first time in her life. And then you stop sort of internalizing it so much, and you are able to cope with things on a daily basis a little bit better, even if they are worse.
Yeah. Oh, that is so powerful. I hope you're giving a lot of people, and especially a lot of people pleasers, permission to let that voice speak up. And the rest of the story is going to prove why it's worthwhile, even if it's hard in the moment. Okay, so you are continually speaking up, being honest, again, with yourself, with your boss, with just the whole situation. And it keeps not going over well. And this culminates in one day you quit. And I want to read you back to you what you emailed me on that day. So you emailed me and said, I finally stood up for myself and quit this morning. I have no other job to go to and no real plan, but geez, it feels so good. I know something will come along if I just trust that the universe will deliver. So that sounded to me like you quit, and maybe you weren't necessarily intending to quit, or even if you were, you didn't have a plan. So can you just tell us a little bit more about how you felt that day?
So that was, it sounds like it was this marvelous thing, but what happened was that was a Friday morning. It was the Thursday morning where everything sort of started happening. My boss brought me in for a meeting Thursday morning at the start of my shift, and basically attacked me on a professional level, attacked my work ethic, my integrity, my character, because a patient came in that has a condition that, as a sports physiotherapist, I don't see. I learned it at university, but that's just not really in my realm of expertise. And this lady came in for treatment, and I didn't feel as though our clinic was equipped to treat her effectively and safely, most importantly. So I referred her on to another practice that specialised in these type of conditions and could actually go see her in her home and provide a safer treatment for her. I stood by that decision. I still stand by that decision, that I couldn't offer her the care that she deserved, and therefore sent her to someone who could. But he saw that as me being lazy. He saw that as me not doing my job. He said, it's in your scope of practice. You need to do your job, do what you're told. And even though I told him, like, I feel like I did the best for this patient. I felt like I did what she deserved and what she needed. And he just said, no, you're here to see patients, and by refusing to see her, you're basically not doing your job. And I quickly realised no matter what I said, he wasn't going to listen. So I actually shut down. I just decided, you know what, that's fine. He's not going to listen. So I just went on about my day, but inside I was fuming.
Sure.
How can you question me like that? I have given everything to this practice. I've given everything to my patients. During the COVID lockdown, we actually got kicked out of our clinic because we were in a gym. So I worked from the garage treating patients. And, like, I had given everything to him. I always stayed late. I always came in early. How can you say that I'm lazy and I'm not doing my job and my work ethic is not there? So I made it through my patients for the day, and I came home that night and literally collapsed on the couch in tears. And it was a mixture of just extreme anger and extreme hurt, that I had done all of this for him to try to keep his business going, and there was no acknowledgement of it. So I literally ugly cried for 2 hours straight. And it's just this massive release. And at the end of it, I said, I cannot do this anymore. I cannot go another day not knowing when the end is coming. And so I said, I have to quit for my sanity, for my health. I have to quit. And I sat down and I typed out my resignation letter. And I was shaking as I did it because I didn't have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, but I have to. So then the Friday morning, I handed in my resignation letter and said, I'd be finishing the following Friday because my contract said I needed a 1-week notice. And I just gave it to him. And I was literally shaking as I handed it to him. He just sort of looked at it and just said, okay, and walked away. Didn't say anything else.
Wow.
And instantly, so he walked away, closed the door. Instantly, this sense of peace came over me, and I was so calm. This massive storm that had been building up for so long, and certainly the night before with all this massive crying and anger and everything else, it just went away instantly. And I couldn't explain it because I knew in the back of my head I didn't have a plan. But just knowing I only had to get through another week of this was so comforting because anything was better than what I'd been doing.
Oh, that is, first of all, I'm very angered on your behalf. I'm like I'm upset at this man for you as I hear this, because God forbid you do the right thing for the patient, right? And stick to your ethics. But that's a whole other rant that I will refrain from going into today. But I imagine, and I'm kind of curious to get into this too, because I know even though there was so much fear and so much uncertainty, you knew you were doing the right thing. It's just everything in your body, everything in your bone was telling you, I can't be here any longer. This is so wrong. This is so misaligned with what I value and what my conscience even is telling me. So that probably fueled some of the feeling of peace and certainly the relief when you handed over your resignation. And I also recognize that when you can have faith that something is going to work out, because even with all the anger, even with all of the tears, if you were someone who had no faith that that things were going to work out, you might have continued to push yourself through the misery because you didn't trust that anything else would happen. And you just would trust, you would have thought, this is the end, I'm screwing myself over and I can't do that. There was something in you that believed, if I do the right thing here, if I follow this voice within me that's crying out for me to leave this place and go somewhere else, you trusted that you would be supported. So having that level of trust in, whether it's in yourself, whether it's in the universe at large, whatever that trust was in, just trust that things will work out. I know that's not a thing that you just develop overnight. I know this to be true about you, but I also just know in general, this is something that you have to build slowly over time, so that when you have these critical moments, when you have to make a big decision that might throw you into a lot of uncertainty, you have to have built up some serious trust ahead of time to be able to withstand that. So I am curious, before we get into what happened after you quit, I want to go back to see, how had you been building your trust, again, whether it's within yourself, within the universe, that things will work out for you if you make really hard decisions that throw you into uncertainty?
Well, it definitely did not happen overnight. It's something that I actually struggled with for a really long time. And I've always been one of those people that logically reasons everything. I have to know the next 50 steps before I can do the first step. I have to know what's going to happen. I have to be in control of myself. So it goes against my nature to just believe that things are going to work out. I've always been a doer. I'm always the one, if there's a problem, I'm the one that solves it. I get things done. So to believe in something else, having the ability to sort of direct me, it definitely took a lot of work. And it was something I started looking into prior to our coaching a few years ago, but it definitely came about more when we were trying to hone in on the values. And one conversation that we had was about trusting your intuition. And we worked a lot about that because at the time I went to a job interview that was wrong. And I told you, I wanted to run out, but I didn't. And we sort of digested that to determine if that was intuition or me being scared and if that was fear. And I worked a lot on that. I, of course, listened to the podcast episodes about Tosha Silver's book, Outrageous Openness. I got the book, I read it, and I read it very slowly. I actually went back and read a few of the chapters multiple times just to try to digest it. And then I started looking for evidence of this. We always say you'll always find evidence for what you're looking for. So I wanted to find evidence of it working for other people, because I could sit there and say, no, logically it doesn't make sense. But I could also logically reason that if it works for other people, why can't it work for me? How am I different? Why wouldn't it work for me? So I actually started really small, and this was about 2.5 years ago, just trusting it for parking spaces. That's where I started. I was going to give a lecture in the city at a venue that has really, really bad parking. Everyone complains about the parking. And it was pouring down rain this day. So I didn't want to have to park 5 or 6 blocks away and have to walk there and be soaking wet by the time I got there. So I was just like, all right, now's the time to practice. And I started practicing, and I was like, universe, I have to give this presentation. I don't want to be soaking wet. I'm believing you for a parking space. And I was like, well, let's just see what happens. So I get into the city, and as I'm getting close to the venue, a car pulls out right in front of the venue. And I pulled in and got the spot.
Oh my God.
And you just kind of laugh to yourself, and you're like, well, good work, universe. But I was like, well, it worked. So then I just started doing it with other things, little things at first. I'm just going to believe for this. I'm just going to believe for this. And things that didn't really matter. At the end of the day, if I had to park somewhere else, I would have. It would have been fine. But just trying it. And the more you see that it works, and the more that you do go looking for evidence from other people that it works, you start to believe, okay, well, it worked for that. Let's try it for something bigger. And you just start sort of playing with it a little bit until you do build up the familiarity with it and the trust that, well, if it worked for that, why can't it work for something else?
I love your parking story. It's just so perfect. And that's a funny one. I've heard of people like testing this out with parking. And I like that as an example because you're right. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, if you have to park a little further away from wherever you're going, whatever, you'll be fine. So you don't have a lot of resistance to believing, hey, maybe I'll get good parking. That'd be nice. Hey, you want to hook me up with some good parking, universe? And so it's a simple, clear thing that you can set an intention for, right? And kind of just throw out there for the universe to hit back. But it doesn't really matter. You're not so attached to it. So it's actually more likely that it's going to work out. And you start to use little moments like that to build up your trust that if something really matters to me and I, desire that to happen, or if I hope for something, or if I just do what I feel like is the right thing and kind of follow that intuition, then it tends to work out in all these little ways. You start to build little bits of trust over time so that when you hit these really big moments, you have this like bank of trust already built up so that you can actually believe things are going to work out even now, even when the stakes are high, because you've been practicing when the stakes were really low. That I think is so huge. I'm really glad you kind of shared that slow build, because that's how trust in anything works.
Yeah, definitely.
You don't meet a stranger off the street and then instantly trust them with your deepest, darkest secrets.
I have not.
Like they have to earn your trust little by little. And the same thing with building trust in the universe. It has to kind of prove to you, and vice versa, like, oh, okay, there's something here. I can trust you to have my back.
Oh, definitely. And I think also looking back over situations from your past where you say, you know, okay, could it have happened before? And you go look back, you know, I've quit jobs before. I've always managed to get another job. So you just look where things have worked out in the past, even if they were really bad at the time, or at the time you didn't see how it could ever possibly work out to be a good thing. But you look back and in hindsight, you go, you know what, that actually worked out for the greater good. And I just went back and said, okay, I feel like the worst case scenario has never actually happened. Like if you really get down to it, it's never actually happened. And I know for some, for some people it has, but if I can think of the absolute worst thing, okay, I don't have a job, I'm going to lose my house, going to lose my car, you know, all these horrible, horrible things, that's never actually happened. So looking for evidence of the universe actually working out in my favor in the past was helpful as well, even though I didn't recognize it at the time.
Yeah, that's so good. Because again, in those past moments, you were probably worrying about the worst case scenario. It didn't happen. The next time you worried about it again, it didn't happen, right? Eventually you're like, maybe I'll just stop stressing about this because things always seem to work out, right? Yeah, so that's a really good suggestion as well, because we're not really used to reliving when things worked in the past. We're so caught up in this moment and the fears and anxieties of the moment that, and that makes sense, honestly, from a survival perspective. Like if you're just trying to survive and get by, you don't get a lot of, like, it doesn't help you to relive all your past wins and successes. It helps you to say what's not working so I can fix it, so I can keep surviving, right? So I can keep evolving, so I can keep growing, so I can keep fixing any problems, so nothing bad happens to me. It takes conscious effort to go back and relive all the moments when it did work.
Yeah, definitely.
When it was smooth and easy and all your fears didn't come true. So really, again, really very intuitive of you to recognize that was what you needed in the moment. You didn't need more anxiety and more fear. You needed reminders of all the times it has worked, which can make you feel a little bit more confident. Like, why is this time going to be that different? I'm sure it's going to work out for me now too.
Yeah, exactly.
Whew, okay, really good. So now we're gonna fast forward a little bit from the day you quit, and then I think it was a few weeks later, you emailed me again, and once again, I'm going to read your email back to you. Okay. You said, "I just wanted to let you know that the universe delivered. I walked out of my old job on the Friday and walked into my new job on the following Monday. I was unemployed for less than 24 hours in the middle of a global pandemic where unemployment is on the rise." That is amazing. When I heard that, I was like, this is so wild. Like, you put your trust out there and almost instant manifestation. So, okay, tell us a little bit more about that story.
So I quit on the Friday and made it through that day and went home, honestly, super excited, but also exhausted. And I tried to look for jobs, but I just couldn't muster up the energy and went to sleep. The next day, the Saturday, I was actually really busy, so I didn't have time to look for jobs. And in the back of my head, there was this little voice going, you really should be looking for jobs. What are you going to do? You're not employed after Friday. But still, I had this unexplainable calmness and peace about everything. So it was on the Sunday, I sat down for the first time and started looking for jobs. And for the first time, I actually let myself be a bit more open-minded. I had always looked for jobs in, it has to be within this radius from my house. It's got to earn this much money. It's got to be this particular title. So I had limited myself and actually felt like for a long time there weren't a lot of positions out there. But I sat down and I said, look, it doesn't really matter. I just need something to pay the bills. So I sat down and it was actually really surprising how many jobs are out there if you're just a little bit more open-minded. And I started applying for positions, and to be honest, I wasn't super excited about any of them. It was just like, you know what, I'm doing my duty. And there was this one position that came up, and it's the job that I have now. And when I saw it, there was something inside of me that was like, this one. But it was a lot less money than what I've been making. It was a junior role, and I've been working in a senior position for many years. And I was just like, that's beneath me. How can I apply for that job? And so I didn't. But it kept sort of nagging at me, and I applied for other jobs, but there was just something about this other job, and it kept coming back to me. On the job site, it was this recommended job kept popping up. And so finally I was like, okay, obviously the universe is trying to tell me this job is bugging me, so I'm just going to apply for it. I don't have to take it. I just need to apply for it. And so the owner called me on the Monday, and he said, actually, the lady that's in this senior role has decided to step down over the weekend, and she wants to go down to just a couple of days a week because she's got small children, wants to look after them. So we actually need somebody for a senior role with a higher pay. And he was like, no. And he was like, I just want to see if you're interested in applying for this role. I was like, are you kidding me? Yes. So I interviewed with him on the Wednesday, and he knew that I was finishing up on Friday, and he asked me, what happened. And again, I was like, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to put up a front like I normally would in an interview and just tell him what he wants to hear. I told him exactly what the problem was, and his whole demeanor just changed. His shoulders fell, his head fell. He said, I'm so sorry. I can't believe an employer would do that to you. And wow. I was just like, I'm sorry? Like, what? No one's ever shown that compassion before. And he's like, well, we do have other people to interview, but I feel really good about this. Would you be willing to start on Monday if we offer you the position? And I was just like, okay, sure. Not really expecting anything from it. And I left, went back to work, finished, worked through the Friday, left there. And Saturday morning, my new boss called and he said, look, we interviewed other people. They were really good candidates, but I just feel like you're the right one. I've got you in the diary for 8:00 Monday morning. And I was just like, are you kidding me? And I hung up the phone. I actually started laughing. I was just like, this is hilarious. I wouldn't apply for the job because it didn't have the right title and the right pay. I did it. I listened to my intuition, and here we are. I've got this new job with a higher pay and a better title than what I have before. And I literally have a job straight away. I was unemployed for less than 24 hours. I walked out at 3:00 on a Friday, and I had a new job by 10:00 on Saturday. Okay. I was just like, all right, okay. I cannot claim that I did that. You just have to say, look, there's definitely a higher power looking out for me. And you just have to kind of laugh because you're like, all right, good job. And I did. I walked into my new job on Monday morning, and the first thing, the receptionist came up to me and she said, "I'm so excited you're here. I've heard about you. I can't wait for you to work here." And ever since, so I've been there since September, and every day it's a conversation with everyone. How are you feeling? How is it going? What's working? What's not working? And there's actually been quite a lot of changes since I've been there to make things work better, not just for me, but for everyone there. And it's flexible with my hours. As a thriver, time is really important to me, and he values that. And if I need to change something, he's like, "Just do it. It's fine," which I've never had before. And that's been a big issue for me in the past. So it was just weird. And the funny thing is, all the other jobs that I applied for, not a single one of them called me. So
of course, right? Of course, they were irrelevant.
They were irrelevant. But you kind of think, it's like, well, hang on, how come they didn't want me? But it doesn't matter, because that job was there, and it was put there for me, and everything just fell into place so effortlessly. And I think that is really important to sort of realize, that sometimes when you hang on so tightly to everything, the universe can't put things into place for you. So sometimes you do just have to go, you know what, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do this. I've got this feeling. I'm just going to go with it and see what happens. Because sometimes everything works out exactly like you want it to.
Yes. Wow. I feel like I've said wow so many times in this interview. But this story is even better than I thought. Like, I was already excited about this story just based on what you had emailed me. And the full story is just beyond what I was expecting. So I wanna go back and put just a highlighter mark over some of the pieces of this story that I want people to take something away from this. The first one is that you, again, as we said, you quit and you just knew it wasn't right, but you didn't know what was going to be right. And you just trusted it was going to show up. And then you could have gone home and been like, "I'm exhausted, but I'm panicked because I need a job. So I need to frantically go home and push through the exhaustion," right? And that probably would not have been super productive. So you actually gave yourself some downtime. And even on that Saturday, you're like, "I have other things going on." You didn't cancel all your plans and say, "I have to spend the whole day frantically searching for jobs." There wasn't this like desperation that there could have been in that situation. But again, the trust just kind of kept, and there's probably that little nagging voice in your head, like, "What are you doing? Don't you need to apply for jobs?" You're like, "It's going to be fine. It's fine." And when you finally did sit down, right, after giving yourself a little time to do some other things and decompress a little bit, you were open-minded to some new things that you wouldn't have even considered before. And there is something about being a little bit under the gun, right? Like, I do need a job in a week, so I guess maybe I'll be a little bit more open-minded, but that served you very well. So even for people who aren't pressured under that, urgent situation to find a job in a week, I still think there's something to be said for being a little bit more open-minded and searching for things that aren't an exact match to what you have done previously. So I want to just highlight that a little bit. Like, let's maybe try some different possibilities. And of course, when you get that feeling of something about that job, I feel like I need to apply, even though logically it makes no sense. Right? Because you were like, "I don't want to make less money. I don't want a junior position. That is beneath me. I have worked beyond that level. I don't know why I'm feeling this way." And you resisted a little bit, of course, because your logical brain was like, "This is a waste of your time." But ultimately, you did trust that instinct. And you said, "I don't know why, but I'm just going to throw an application in and just see what happens, because this job is like stalking me online." Yes. And it's stalking my thoughts. So that must be for some reason. So when you get those inklings, even if they don't make sense, just try just try an experiment of like, well, what if I just try to listen to it and just see what happens? The worst that could have happened, they offer you a job that you didn't want to take. Fine, whatever, not a huge deal.
Exactly. And I actually had that conversation with myself, I'm going, why do I want to waste my time? Why do I want to waste their time? And then you actually can put logic in there and go, well, the worst that's going to happen is they hire you and you don't accept the position. No harm done. Like you do sometimes have to have that logical talk with yourself if you have a very logical brain. And then just go back, what's the worst that can happen? Well, I just say, no, that's not that bad. They'll find someone else. It's not that bad.
Right. Exactly. So, that logical part of your brain is going to be there, but you can like do some mental gymnastics to put that part aside for a little while so that your intuition does get heard. And that's the part of you that's been trying to get your attention for so long. So you've been practicing listening to it anyway. So you had a little bit more trust that, all right, maybe this is leading somewhere that I don't get right now.
Yeah, definitely.
And just the final piece of this story that I want to emphasize is the honesty that you brought right from the beginning to your new boss in an interview where you're right. Most people, and probably you in many past interviews, they just say what they need to say to try to, especially if you really need a job like you did. It was a Wednesday. You had 2 more days, right, of work. You really needed a job. It would have been tempting, I'm sure, to give, when they said, well, what happened? Why are you leaving this job so abruptly? For you to just say something vague or say something that, tries to smooth it over and not get into the nitty gritty and kind of raw truth of the matter. But that's not what you'd been practicing. That's not, you wanted to keep letting that voice within you that had been silent for so long keep speaking up. And this time, it went beautifully. This is what you were hoping was going to happen when you spoke up with your last boss. And that one blew up in your face. So once again, you could have said, I don't think I want to be that honest because when I tried that before, that went way out of control. But you did it anyway. And this time, it really did work. Now there's alignment because you were just raw and honest and shared the whole truth. And it sounds like it actually made this new boss and really just the whole staff there relate to you and like you and want you even more because you shared your values and they were able to say, wow, we also value that. You belong here.
Yeah, it was one of those things that, I go back to this little sense of empowerment. When I was being honest before, I knew something felt right. And it was like, you let me out of the box, I can't go back in now. And the thought of just going back into that same cycle again, of getting into a job where I'm not honest with them, I pretend to be okay with everything, and then a few months later it gets unbearable. I just couldn't do that anymore. And my last job, it actually got so bad that it started affecting my health. And I was actually starting to have trouble with my spleen and my liver. And that's pretty serious stuff.
Yeah.
And, the doctors are saying it's stress related, it's burnout. You cannot do this. If you keep doing this, something really bad is going to happen and you will probably die. And I was sitting there going, in the back of my head, like I'm only in my 30s. I don't want to die from something horrible just because of job. A job is not worth my life.
No way.
And again, it goes back to I was just so sick of being in that situation over and over again. And it got to the critical point where if I did do that again and my health didn't improve, that's going to be irreversible damage. So what's the worst that can happen? Well, the guy could blow up at me again and not give me the job. That's the worst that could happen. That's fine. I would go find something else. But I I had to try because I was desperate to not get back into that same situation. And that outweighed the fear of telling the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's often when we find the courage, right? Is when the fear of continuing on that pattern gets so much bigger than the fear of finally doing the scary, hard thing of breaking the pattern.
Yeah,
and what is scarier than saying, if I keep having the same level of stress and burnout that's work related, my physical health is going to break down. And that's nothing is worth that. Certainly not a job. So you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your body to do what it takes to find something that is going to be a fit, where you're not stressed and burnt out all of the time, and where there's alignment, like physical alignment, emotional alignment, values alignment, all of that. Wow. This such a powerful story. Like, I'm inspired. I hope a lot of people are inspired by this story. There's just so many nuggets of things to take from this. I guess I'll just ask for anyone who might be feeling a little bit paralyzed by fear. Like they recognize a pattern, just like you recognized a pattern that was not serving them anymore. They recognize a pattern and they know that they need to probably make a change, but it just feels really scary and they want to believe. Like, they're hearing you talk about trust in the universe. They really want to believe that. What would you tell them? What advice would you have them? What are some of the things that worked for you that they could start implementing?
I think it's just getting real with yourself and saying, if I continue down this path, what is this going to look like? Versus if I do step out and say something, what could it be? So you do have to sort of look at that and compare the two, and then go back to, well, what's the worst case scenario? I say something, nothing changes. Well, I'm no worse off than I was. Versus if I say something and it does change, well, then I'm better. So you've really got nothing to lose there. And I think just starting and just going through those scenarios and saying, what could it be? Can it be that if I don't say something? And most of the times the answer is no. They're not going to suddenly change to match your values if you don't speak up and say what your values are in the first place. So even though it's really, really scary, I think you have to weigh up, how is this going to go if I don't say anything versus what could potentially happen if I do?
Yeah. Yeah. And that takes some serious honesty with yourself. But it is so worth having that conversation. Because
definitely.
As definitely. You see oh, go ahead.
It doesn't have to be big things. I started with little things. The first time I said something to my boss, it wasn't, this place is not aligned with me. It was something really small. Like, I think, I can't really remember, but I'm pretty sure it was something about the letterhead we were using. And I was just like, I'm going to practice. And I was like, actually, I don't think this letterhead looks very nice. And I gave my honest feedback, and he was like, oh, okay. And, I was like, well, that didn't kill me. It didn't change anything. He kept the letterhead the same. But it was little things that don't matter. It doesn't matter at the end of the day what letterhead he uses. But I started small with that as well. And then I did that actually for a couple of weeks before I did stand up and say, look, this is actually not working for me in a bigger picture. But just sometimes you have to try things just a little at a time, just like I did with the parking space. The same thing happened with speaking out. I just tried little tiny things. And the more you try it, the better you get.
Yeah. I was going to say, there feels like there's a theme building here of like baby steps, starting small.
Yes.
Don't push yourself so far over. Don't expect that much of yourself, frankly. That's not healthy. And it's also not how progress really happens. So yeah, start really small with trusting the universe, trusting that things will work out, trusting little things like parking space. That's a great one for people to just start trying right away. Just like try to manifest a parking space wherever you drive to
Definitely.
next. I love that one. And try speaking up in small ways too. Like, I don't like this letterhead, right? That's a perfect place to start. Because again, at the end of the day, like really, who cares? But you got heard and you actually said what you thought. Whereas you probably in the past would have said, oh, it's fine, right? Oh yeah, it's okay. Like if they ask for your feedback, oh, sure, it's fine. Like, no, actually, I don't like it very much. Actually, I think it could be better this way. That's where you start. You don't start with the big, giant, terrifying conversations. You can work your way up to that. So really, really good insights. I hope a lot of people are inspired for so many reasons for this. The speaking up and getting over the people-pleasing tendencies and building up your trust in the universe and that things are going to work out, building up your trust in yourself and your honesty within yourself, and even just breaking through some limiting beliefs, like nobody's hiring right now in a pandemic, right? Well, clearly that's not true because it took you less than 24 hours to get a job offer after leaving your previous job. People are hiring, but you might have to be a little bit more open-minded. Maybe you need to be a little bit creative thinking a little bit in that realm. So so many good things. Thank you so much for sharing this story. I think it's coming at really good timing too. People are trying to figure out what are they going to do with this new year. You know, we're here now. We're in January when this is going live, and I think this conversation is going to be really timely. So thank you so much, Christina. For anyone who really resonates with this story, please leave a comment on our blog. We'll have a link in the episode description where you can share your thoughts. If you want to connect with Christina, just shoot us an email at contact@clarityonfire.com, and I'm happy to make an introduction. But otherwise, thank you for your time. Thank you for all of your wisdom. And we will be in touch much sooner than 2.5 years this time, I promise.
No, thank you. It's really good to be able to tell the story because I think people need it, certainly after such a hard year and so much negativity that's been out there. I think it's good for people to hear that things can be better and they will be better. It's just sometimes you have to make a conscious effort to make them better and allow them to be better.
Mm-hmm. You're so right. We need positivity after the year we just all survived. So yes. This is a good hit of it at the start of a new year. All right. Thank you so much. And we will talk soon.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, I look forward to listening to what you all just listened to because in this current day, I haven't listened to it yet. I don't listen to it till it comes out.
I always find it fun if I'm going to listen to our podcast, which full disclosure, I do not listen to most of them. It's too weird. You know how it feels to listen to your own voice. It's just, you can't even focus on what you're saying because you're listening to your stupid inflection. And I hate it.
I only get that.
People are going to understand this when I say
I understand. I love listening to our podcast. I don't like watching videos of myself. So I understand my voice doesn't bother me. My face bothers me. So
I don't like doing either one. Okay. I just think it's too weird. But what I do really like is listening to episodes that I haven't heard before. Like if it's my podcast and you interviewed someone, that's fun for me.
Well, right. So I'm going to listen to this.
You're going to enjoy this one because you haven't.
I would have listened to it anyway. But yeah, it's new to me as well. And I'm sure it's going to give me all sorts of fodder for, expecting things to happen within 48 hours. And then I'm going to be like, why didn't that happen? Why didn't I do something on a Friday and then end up with something on a Monday? It's going to give me unrealistic expectations.
Well, maybe.
Probably.
But I think it will mostly help you feel like, you know what? Anything can happen.
I
Who
love
knows?
that, though. I need that. As a cynic and someone who strives not to think the worst of everything all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to be reminded that things can just change on a dime in a good way.
Yeah. And when the days start to feel all the same and running together, it's nice to have proof like, no, things can look totally different in
48 hours later.
Short amount of time.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll be back next Friday. We're not coming back on Tuesday. We do every other Tuesday episodes. If you're new, you didn't know that. So we'll be back next Friday with a new side chat.
Yep.
I know not what, but we'll be back.
You'll find out then.
Okay, bye.